Welcome to the Executive Coach Podcast. If you've ever avoided a tough conversation, felt resentful after saying yes, or held yourself or others to impossible standards, then this episode is going to land for you, because those patterns, they're not just quirks, they are saboteurs. They're part of the 9 saboteurs we have been unpacking in this mini series. So in part 1, we looked at the overall framework. Part 2, we went on a deep dive into 2 of the core saboteurs that I see a lot of, which are the hyperachiever and the hyper-rational. And today we're going to wrap it up. We're going to look at 2 more saboteurs, the pleaser and the avoider. And we might also be able to touch on the stickler, which is the perfectionist. And we then invite in the sage, which is the way that you can then start to manage these saboteurs. So if you do want those clearer boundaries, braver conversations, and a way of doing those that feels good and doesn't feel so painful, because I know that for avoiders, tough conversations can feel painful. We take you step by step through ways of making that so much easier for you, and therefore allowing so much more to be possible in your life. Let's dive into today's episode. So Graziela, thank you so much for being back today. Did you want to say anything about the pleaser or the avoider?
Yes. So with the avoider, what I normally say is, if you're afraid of difficult conversations, and I'm currently working with a group of London Business School students who are doing an executive MBA, a lot of that came up were around how hard it is to give feedback and how we avoid these conversations. I don't want to open a can of worms, and the mentor's dilemma. Should I, if I don't say anything, they won't feel bad that things are not great. But then if you don't, at the same time, they won't go away, right? So it's really empowering yourself to giving feedback in a way that is constructive and positive. So I give them 2 frameworks. One is by a lady called Judy Ringer, and she builds something called the 4 steps to difficult conversations. Let's say you want to have a difficult conversation with your boss. Like you're reporting to the CEO, and you come, and he or she are being controlling or are not recognizing, and you want to talk about it, but you are afraid of upsetting, for example. So the framework she gives is very simple. There are 4 steps. The first one is, I want to talk to you about this topic, but before I give my perspective, I want to hear yours. And so it's really opening up. And when you do that, you need to shut up. You cannot interrupt. You cannot judge. You just need to let the person speak freely, and you have to switch on 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Switch on the listening mode, and listening at level 3 as we're learning coaching, really listening to understand, really curious. And actually, what am I learning that I don't know? With curiosity. And then you listen to the person's perspective. You might make notes, make mental notes. You're not preparing your answer. It's so different. You're listening. Once the person has had a chance to share, then you acknowledge, okay, what you're telling me, it's not in a condescending way, it's not in a judgmental, in a critical way. Just to make sure I get it. What you're telling me is this, and that's how it's coming across to you. Is that fair? Is there anything else that I'm missing? Get that acknowledgement and understanding that you're on the same page. Oh, I get, okay. Then, once 1 and 2 have happened, they will be open-minded to listen to you. If 1 and 2 don't happen, they're less likely to be open to you. And then you get into both of you, how you have your agenda, the other person has the agenda, and you're each trying to influence each other, but nobody's listening to anybody, and it's just a disaster. So this approach, listening, acknowledging, then sharing. And when you share, again, no criticism, no judging, no finger pointing. This is how I'm feeling. This is my perspective. That's the step number 3. And the 4th one, how should we work together to resolve this? And it's just simple. It's not so easy to put into practice, because we automatically go into the fight mode, and the armor. But once you use it, it becomes more natural. It's amazing. So that's a very good tool for the avoider. Now I'm going to have this conversation, and I know how to do it without upsetting the person.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. I've even sort of like trained the family on it as well. So my 9-year-old son, he's like, if he sees any kind of conflict type conversation in the house, he's like, remember to acknowledge. That's funny.
Wonderful.
It's so
Yes.
funny.
And the other thing for the avoider to remember that is such a trap is that if you don't bring the elephant, talk about the elephant in the room, the elephant is not going to disappear. And so you become passive aggressive. You treat the person differently. You become resentful. And one day it blows up. And so the opposite of what you want. You want peace and you want to not enter into an argument. But what happens is because you avoid, you build a wall. And then it's really bad for the relationship. So it backfires.
100%. You know, if I could change the world, it would be that avoiders could know this, because I think that I see a lot of it. I see a lot of it going on. Both sort of personally and professionally, I see it in different spaces. The other thing that I found can be helpful here for people to know when I'm really coaching people to go and have that difficult conversation is if it doesn't go well, there is a degree of that was in your control, but the rest of it is not within your control.
You've tried. Yeah.
And how the other person responds, if you have come to it from a place of this lovely acknowledgement and listening and rationality, the way that they respond now will just give you information about them. Exactly. It is not whether you passed or failed.
Exactly. And you've tried and you did your best, and you talked about the elephant in the room. And the other point to the avoider I always try to remember is when to have, and never do it when your emotions are at a very high level. Calm down first, reset, clear your head. Because if you go emotionally charged, it's unlikely it will go well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just challenge you slightly, because sometimes I've seen this in organizations where they kind of say, well, never do it, when you're emotional. I'm like, well, this is why a lot of conversations don't happen, because people are worried that the emotional, because it's so strong. And so what I say is you can just say to people in advance, like, look, this is probably a little bit of a sensitive topic for me. So if I do show some emotion, like apologies in advance, right? Because this is, it might be a bit, but I still think we need to have the conversation, because I think sometimes that actually gets in the way of people then feeling like they can have it, because it's too sensitive for them, and they know that they could be tipped over the edge.
Yes, I think this is an interesting one to pay attention to, because if you are emotionally charged, you're less likely to respond in a wise, calm, collected, clear-headed, with perspective. If you have the chance to step back and say, okay, why is this important? Why is it upsetting me? What could be in there? And you have a chance to reflect and really go back. Sometimes you go back with much less intensity and more clarity about why this is important and how you're feeling, because you've had the chance to process. If you haven't processed the emotion, you are less likely to have the perspective that you need to have a positive dialogue and to hold a safe space, and not turn the conversation into a negative a criticism, etc. So I like to encourage the space to step back, and then of course come back and have it. Don't avoid it.
Yeah. And I think what I've just seen is that sometimes these things are quite heavy, and so I think what people worry about is that they may let slip an emotion, right? Because even if they've done all the processing, right, I know that my most difficult conversations, they still carry like pain, or they still carry things. Those hardest conversations for ourselves, they can be deeply rooted. And so if a conversation does end up emotional, like, it's okay. If the intention is positive, you can still demonstrate some emotion.
Yes, as long as it's not finger pointing and criticism and attacking.
As long as it's not aggressive.
Yes.
There's no need for aggressiveness, right? So aggressive versus assertive versus passive behavior. So we want to kind of be in the assertive, right, where we're not pointing that emotion towards someone. But I guess what I don't want listeners to walk away and think that they mustn't share emotion, because I think that this is a problem inside organizations, and it stops some harder conversations happening.
Agree.
Okay, great. So I'm conscious of the time in the conversation remaining. So was there any other saboteur that you wanted to touch on, or shall we move a little bit to the sage?
It's up to you. I mean, the pleaser can be an interesting one, and I see a lot with working moms. They have this need to be everything to everyone, and that can really take a toll. So I would just say, if you have the pleaser tendency, recognize that you only show up at your best if you set some boundaries for yourself. An exhausted and drained professional or mother is less value to your organization or to your family. And so how to set those boundaries in a way that lets other people know what you need. What do you need to be successful, and maybe take care of yourself and respect your needs. And the 3 tips to the pleaser is bring a little bit of a rebel in you and say, is this for me? Is there anyone else here that could do this better than me? Why should it be question? Is this my job to do this? And if you end up saying yes to that, what else can you take off your plate? And if it's a request from somebody senior, it's like, what, I can do that, but can I do it in 3 weeks? Otherwise, I'm going to have to take that off the plate. And what's your preference? So you're negotiating. And the other third one is, okay, let's say you've questioned, it is your job to do, you're going to do it. You take something off your plate, you have a boundary. What do you want in return? It's an opportunity to say, okay, I'm giving, what is it that I'm getting? And that is valid for your family. Mom, can you take me to this, or can you clean the room? After you clean the room, I'll take you. Little things that say, you're not just giving, it's a give and take, and you feel like it's a more horizontal relationship. So the pleaser needs to learn to say no and to set boundaries better.
I love that. And is there anything in knowing who you want to please? So some of my clients, they're pleasing at work, and it might be a male client actually. So he's saying yes at work, but he knows that behind the scenes, his family's suffering because he's coming home late because he's saying yes to things. And so actually we did a little reframe around, well, who is it that you really like, who really matters here? Like when you maybe leave this job and look back, I spoke to a hedge fund HR lady once, and she said that in the exit interview, one of the guys said, I wish I had worked less. I left here every day at 8 o'clock and nobody knows and nobody cares, and my family was sacrificed. And I always remember that because, if you're going to be a pleaser, make sure you've done the work and the reflection to know who are the most important people in your life that you want to please. And they may not be the person, around the corner at your desk in the office. It might be somebody at home or somebody at your partner.
I love that. Yes, it's having a clear. I think Brené Brown says it's not the critic who counts. It's such a beautiful TED talk, and it's really about you selecting who you want your audience to be, and not your imaginary audience that you want to please, but the people that really count. And you can be you are the best judge of that. Who you want to be there, and people you're willing to make sacrifices, even if you don't get recognition.
Wow. Okay, I might need to go and look at that TED Talk. Fantastic. So the final thing that we wanted to touch on was the sage. Now, what would you love to share with the audience about the sage?
So the way she's at, there's a whole app, there's a book, there's so much about the sage. So the sage is a version of you that can see every challenge as an opportunity, as a gift, either to learn or to do something in a better way. And how do you get to that place? So he recommends the sage has 5 powers. So let's say you're in the studio pleaser, saboteur, you're hyper rational, you're like, okay, I'm out of my head, into my body, I've used my senses, and I'm now calm and collected. What do I do? And then the sage has the power of empathy. So usually that's the first one. How do I connect to the person? What's important for them? The curiosity, the exploration. And so he teaches you how to use empathy, curiosity, exploration. The fourth one is called the navigation. Navigation is about this sense of time. So is this important in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time? And the final one is activate. So once you've had the chance to empathize, once you've explored options, once you brought curiosity and innovation, how else can we do this differently? What haven't I thought about and considered? Is this important in 5 years? Is this important in 10 years? What is the right action to take? So those are the 5 powers.
So is it empathy?
Empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate.
Amazing.
And when you look at a lot of different models for, the Enneagram, or any kind of assessment, you can connect the effectiveness, the leadership effectiveness, for example, the leadership circle that I'm certified on. You can see the value of relating to employees, foster team play, collaborates. They are all using sage powers.
Yeah. And us as coaches, this is what we do, right? Empathy, explore, navigate, innovate, activate.
That's it.
We spend a lot of time in this.
We walk our
Um,
clients through this journey, and so help them see what they're not seeing and clear the fog, make better
yes.
decisions with perspective. That's exactly that.
Yeah, I was funnily enough talking to another Ember coach last week, and we were saying that sometimes when we do all of this work, and then we hit the real world, and we realize everyone else is not having conversations in this way. It's like, oh, like you go back to Christmas, and it's like everyone else is the same, but you're like
It
constantly
should go
evolving.
to the schools, right? I mean, this should be implemented early in the kids' education. I have to say, my daughter's school was really good at teaching them how to have difficult conversations and how to address problems in the classroom. And I really liked how they had empathy, and they asked questions, and they say, "This is how you're making me feel." It was an accusation, and it was so beautiful to see that early.
That's really great that because these are the things that can have such a huge impact on us later.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a huge part of our work, right, to help people with this stuff. So okay, so that's a great way to just wrap up and say, okay, so that's on the other side, right? You've got the saboteurs, but then you have these ways which I'm sure many of us will spend time in every day anyway. And so actually recognizing that we have a lot of these skills, and we have a lot of this ability to be in empathy, innovation, exploration, navigation, and then activate. But as you say, I know that there is a whole set of tools and an app and much more to explore, and the book,
In the book and the
which might be
course, yes, there's a
which might
lot on
be
the
a,
website.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So, we're going to draw the conversation to a close here. Graziella, thank you so much for sharing these conversations. It has been really impactful for me, actually, just to have this conversation with you. We have directed people to your LinkedIn, which will be in the show notes. So if you found this conversation interesting, go and connect with Graziella on LinkedIn and maybe have a conversation with her. I'm sure that you will find it really, really powerful. I've loved this conversation.
I've loved it too. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm so glad you're giving this platform for more people to know about it. So, thank you. A pleasure to collaborate.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for listening to the Executive Coach podcast, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. Bye bye.